So, in prior talks, I've talked about the map of awakening from the Zen tradition's perspective, that there are three categories of awakening: the Kensho, which just means seeing into one's nature, as Dogen Roshi talked about it, the dropping away of mind and body. And the duration, the depth of that awakening, we gauge simply by how long the sense of self is suspended, is not present, how long we don't know who we are. And eventually, for those experiencing Kensho, some form of the self returns. Not exactly the same. It's been purified somewhat, but enough comes back that you recognize the sense of self. And that begins its own work of working whatever issues, whatever triggering events happen, those become our work. And when the time is ripe, there's further Kensho, which can lead to the Satori experience. And that's a more sustained awakening experience that lasts longer and involves more of the consciousness. So it's a deeper, more long-lasting awakening. And then begins the more challenging work, the deeper personality work that relates to our core wound, who we take ourselves to be at the deepest level, the sense of worthlessness, valuelessness, failure. Those are the issues we're engaging. And it's hard. It's very hard work because so much is dependent on it, and we hold these beliefs so dearly, even though they're painful, we hold them nonetheless. Because in part, it's our connection not only to ourselves, but to our family, how we relate to the people around us. And should we be fortunate enough to work these issues to some satisfaction, some resolution, then the realization of Daigo Teitei can happen. And the big difference between Daigo Teitei and Satori is Daigo Teitei, for one, is slowed way down. Kensho and Satori are quick. They happen in a brief moment. And the Daigo Teitei takes place over weeks or months, maybe years. And slowly, each step of the awakening, we have to affirmatively say yes. We have to agree. And we let go. We let go of the stories. We let go of the convictions. And the big distinction between Kensho and Satori is, with Satori, our true nature, the qualities of the absolute in our consciousness become the core identity rather than the self. I mean, there's still the self operating, but we know on some level it's not real, even though it operates and it causes problems for us. And with the Daigo Teitei realization, rather than true nature being our foundation, the absolute is our foundation. When we self-reference, that's what we find, is qualities of the absolute. In Theravada Buddhism, there's also a map of awakening. There's a 4-stage model that's followed. And the first stage is stream entry, where one enters the stream of the absolute, in my framing. Interestingly, a lot of the Western teachers, I won't say a lot, some of the Western teachers equate Kensho with stream entry, with first stage, Theravada awakening. I don't know that happens in Asia, but it is happening here. In fact, some of the Theravadan teachers, their stream entry experience was Kensho rather than the traditional Theravadan experience. In Theravada, each of the stages of awakening are preceded by a sustained experience of cessation. Cessation is the ceasing of all mentality and materiality. So anything that you can know about yourself or the world, mentally or through materiality, is gone completely. And cessation is like the eye of the hurricane. It's that calm center that all activity emanates from. And it takes a while to understand the functioning of cessation, that through the absolute peace and stillness in particular, and the absence, the emptiness, that by embracing, welcoming everything, it causes everything to stop, to cease. And that's its power. Its power is so welcoming, so inclusive, so accepting that it just takes everything. And yet it has a kind of a power, which is when it comes through the love and presence of the manifest absolute, that's what gives life. I talked about the flower coming out of the ground. That's that force. And with the stream entry experience, there's a number of features that happen or realizations that happen. And the main one is that there's a suspension of personality view. Doesn't mean the sense of self of the personality is gone, but our allegiance to the view from that personality ceases. So we begin to start tracking that, yes, there's this viewpoint from this body and this life experience, and there's also more going on. True nature is looking out too. We have the sense that there's something more happening. And in the subsequent realizations of Theravada, one has to do comparable work to the Zen tradition. And then there are the other three stages, the once returner, non-returner, and then arahant is the fourth stage. And it's believed in Theravada that a stream enterer will have a maximum of 7 more lifetimes of rebirth before they'll be an arahant and be off the wheel of existence. So Theravada Buddhism is oriented as a renunciate approach to the absolute. I think in part because I think the Buddha was an aversive type. So getting off the wheel of existence was like really desirable. Among modern students, I only have a couple of students that hold that viewpoint. I want to get off the wheel of existence. It's nothing but pain. It's nothing but challenge and difficulty. And most people that I work with embrace more of a sort of the Zen or Tibetan viewpoint, which is more about engaging in life, bringing realization to life, and really imbuing life with that understanding. And so as I mentioned, for the stream enterer, it's believed 7 more lifetimes. Once returner means 1 more lifetime. The third stage is non-returner, meaning that entity is not coming back into human form again. The traditional Theravadan view is that one then would be reborn in a Deva realm, one of the angel heavenly realms, for whatever lifetimes are necessary to complete the work. One of the students of Paul Saito, who I was a student of, was someone who had remembered her past lives in the Deva realm. And I've talked about her before. She was fascinating to talk to because she could talk all about what it was like with great clarity. And the main message she had was you had anything you could possibly want was available. So just imagine anything, I want warm slippers and boom, they're there, whatever you want. And she said, but the problem was there was no dukkha, there was no suffering. So there was very little need or want to practice. I mean, you're getting everything you want. Life is wonderful. And, they always have your favorite foods. You never get fat. The dessert table is gigantic and on and on. I mean, whatever you can imagine as a heaven, that was it. And she said that she got bored being there. She was there for 500 years. And she said it was boring. You get everything. I mean, there's no challenge. There's no wonder, gee, am I going to get this? And you will. So she really emphasized the human realm. This is where we do have dukkha, we do suffer, and that motivates us to practice. So we're fortunate in that having a human rebirth. The fourth stage, arahant, in the days of the Buddha, if you read the Buddha's suttas, the Buddha's sermons or talks, It's very often there'll be 10,000 people at his talks, and he'll do this and that and say this and that, and 1,000 people will become arahants, and 5,000 will be stream enterers, and all these people just popping into these things left and right. And of course, today it's a little different. Today in Theravada Buddhism, particularly in Asia, there's a viewpoint that maybe there's 1 or 2 people per generation become arahants. It's very, very rare. And of course, among the Western teachers, we always assume it's going to be the Ajahn Chahs and, Pawak and these other people who are just these phenomenal meditators and, amazing people. And the rest of us, well, we're going to move on the path, but Arahant's probably not in the cards for us. And it's unfortunate that's been held that way, because I think it limits people. I think there's possibilities that aren't realized because of that. But the key for the Theravadan path is the experience of cessation. And I think cessation is a very valuable experience. It's different than a kensho. The experience itself, we journey to cessation using the blackness, using peace and stillness. Those are the vehicles that we engage and just take deeper and deeper. I've mentioned before, at some point when we get deep enough to cessation, you can feel a tractor beam. There's like a latch on. It feels like all of a sudden you're getting, wait a minute, you're getting pulled into something. And we have to say yes. We cognize this thing is happening. This cessation is approaching very soon, and we have to be willing. That this cessation doesn't seem to be able to sort of pull us in when it wants. We have to say yes. And I taught a retreat, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago on cessation, and I came up with another term called the cessation waiting room, because I can guide people up to near cessation, but I can't guide people into cessation. The absolute doesn't work that way through me. And a lot of people would get to where they could feel cessation, they could feel the tractor beam, but the yes wasn't there yet. And so they and I just tell them, hang out there. It's really important. You're close enough, you can feel cessation. You're not in it, but you can start getting acclimated. You can get accustomed to it. So I called it the cessation waiting room. Said, just find a wait in the waiting room, and then when you're ready and can say yes, then this will happen. So just to know, that's part of the process of it. The other is that for both kensho and cessation, it seems to me from observing students that there needs to be at least a 30-minute experience of cessation or kensho for it to be something that changes us. And people can have more than that. The first time I experienced cessation, I was rather foolhardy and was doing the 2-month retreat. So I had done the 8 jhanas, and I felt like I was just capable of traversing these distant realms. And I was used to doing 3 hours in jhana. So I thought, well, I'll just do a 3-hour cessation time resolve. I mean, how that can't be so hard. So cessation arose, and I had my time resolve, and of course the time resolve was accurate. And I came out after 3 hours, and I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. It was overwhelming. I couldn't fathom much. I couldn't process. And I tell people it was really foolish of me. Today I would never advise someone to do that. I wouldn't do it myself. So I tell people, if you're going to set a time resolve, if you're getting close to cessation, you can internally say, may cessation arise for 30 minutes, or have a specific amount in time in mind, and that can work. For me, because I was so sustained, and after a 2-month retreat, this was at the very end, and it took me about 18 months to get over that retreat, to integrate and let the effects of that retreat really land in my life. So it was really too much. It shouldn't take that long after a retreat. So I overdid it, which is why I don't encourage folks to do that. But this week we'll be focusing more on cessation and orienting that way and seeing just what it's like. And again, you never have to go anywhere you don't want to go. It requires your consent. So just know that nothing's going to happen that's something you don't agree to. And you'll see, it'll be surprising to each of us to see what brings us to the no when we're not quite ready to say yes to cessation. What the no's about. We come here and retreat and we're like, yes, I want Kensho, I want cessation. And all of a sudden they get close, like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's put the brakes on here. It's coming too fast. I can also tell I'm not going to be in control. So all the alarms go off. So we have to realize we're not as ready as we thought we were. We feel like, in my mind, I'm ready, but maybe not in my heart. So just be patient with yourself. Give yourself time, ripen, get used to it, address whatever issues get triggered, and that'll make you more and more ready to say yes. Any questions on this? Yeah, it's looked at in Theravada that from any experience, there's going to be a fruition, there's going to be an effect, a benefit. And so with each of the stages of awakening in Theravada, there are benefits that get experienced. And also each realization has material that gets highlighted for that realization. And until one works with that material, then the next realization wouldn't be available. And that doesn't mean that somebody couldn't have many trips into cessation, but not every trip into cessation is a step on the Theravadan path. We have to have done the work to where we do a shift. And so it's afterwards, as we're reintegrating the experience, as we're seeing what fruits have manifested from that experience, that's how we tell. And as a teacher, this is how you tell also. You're watching people's behavior. How impacted are they from either Kensho or cessation? Are they changing? Are they becoming more wholesome, more heart-based? And if they go back and they're just the old familiar person, then sure, it had an impact, but it wasn't a big shift. So there's probably going to be more of that level before they move on. Well, you can undo the benefits for sure. I mean, the experiences still happened. That was real. But yeah, we don't have to integrate it. We can turn away. We can do a lot. But unfortunately, I doubt any of that's going to last. At some point, we're going to get fed up and tired of the dukkha of it, and we'll know. It's painful. Well, it is, and we know now there's a solution. And so, yeah, but one of my teachers was really adamant that if people stopped meditating, they could lose their attainment. I don't know if that's true or not, but that sounds reasonable. I don't have an opinion on it either way. But I think we get motivated to practice, not because we want to get somewhere, but just because we enjoy practice. So it shifts a bit. Well, the first question, I have more students who have had Kensho than cessation by a lot. Yeah. So I think Kensho is more accessible. The problem with cessation, the issue we have with cessation is that we get that we can see the door in, and we know that we're not going to have any control at all in the experience. The problem is we have no idea how we're going to exit. It's not clear at all. Whether we're going to exit is not clear at all. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's been interesting as a teacher is I've learned that people are more afraid of annihilation than they are death. And cessation communicates annihilation. You're going to disappear. We don't know if you're going to reappear. Want to come in? I'll just wait. So that's the issue. And we all get that on some level. Yeah. But the peace and the stillness will eventually get us to where we can feel, this is where it's going to go. And the reaction for most of us is, if I disappear, could be worse. I disappear into peace and stillness, maybe love and presence. Not so bad. There's worse places to be stuck. But we all, as far as I know, I mean, there are, of course, legends of, I used to hear Tibetan teachers talk about, they'd find these Tibetan yogis in caves and, and one person, they thought they were dead and they brought the body out and did all this stuff and they realized the person was alive, but they had been so deep in cessation for years that their body was still, keeping alive minimally. Who knows if any of that's true? There's a lot of legend in all the traditions. As I said the other day, meditation doesn't produce awakening. It's not a cause and effect. But like a farmer planting a field, if the field is fertilized and plowed and furrows are dug and it's watered, the seeds are going to do better. And that's what meditation does. There's a famous koan. There's a student who's meditating all the time, every free time. I mean, he sprints to the meditation hall. And so the teacher positions themselves right outside the hall. They're bent down in sort of this garden. And as the person comes walking out of the meditation hall, the teacher picks up a piece of tile and starts rubbing it on a rock, real vigorously. And he goes, "What do you," student says to the teacher, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm trying to make a mirror." And he keeps rubbing this tile on the rock. And the student's like, "What? You're not going to make a mirror out of a tile on a rock." And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "And you won't have Kensho for meditating." And so he's communicating, yes, it's very helpful, but it doesn't produce awakening. It's not the world of cause and effect. It's not a conditioned event. It's an unconditioned event. But Kensho is much more accessible. I mean, just by the numbers, we can see that. The majority of my students have had awakenings in a guided meditation I do. Okay. The others, most of the rest, and this isn't all, have had it right after the guided meditation while they're walking in nature or outside. Okay. With the koan work, one of the teachers I worked with, Henry Schuckman, recommended that you not bring your koan on the cushion, that you keep it off the cushion only. And he said that most people resolve their koans off the cushion, which would be my opinion as well in watching people. So the meditating helps. I actually did, sometimes I did it on the cushion, sometimes off. It was kind of like if it was still with me, I couldn't put it down, then it's going in meditation. But I didn't specifically take it as an object, meaning I didn't, I was doing shikantaza on the cushion. So yeah, so there's that as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank
you. Sure.